It is with huge pleasure that I invite you to unmute yourselves and put your hands together for Mr. David Bird, aka Birdey. I rarely refer to him as what I'd love you to do is just to kind of kick off by describing, what you do, what your work and your business is, and then tell a bit about what first sparked your interest in the principles and what the journey has been that has us having this conversation, and then we'll jump into the details.
Firstly, thanks, Jamie, for I don't think I've ever been clapped coming onto one of these things, so thank you so much for that. The other thing I want to say is you've given me about 3 things to do. You also know that I can tangent really well. So if you could just nudge me if I end up going off on one.
Liz was on this morning, and I said, you don't have to worry about me interrupting you. I almost certainly will. So. Yeah, feel free. But yeah, just in a nutshell, what you're up to these days, and then just tell kind of the story of how you come to be here in this conversation.
Sure. So, well, I'm going through a bit of an identity crisis at the moment, to be honest, Jamie. Because, well, as you know, so when I found you and I found the principles, I was a hypnotherapist, and I still have that title at the moment, or somewhat, because I don't know how to. I'm afraid if I kind of get rid of it completely, all my clients might disappear because I don't know what to replace it with yet. But that was kind of what happened during my journey. Was I realized I was at the point where I was kind of I was having consultations with clients, and what it looked like to me at the time was that I was enrolling clients who I didn't know how to help. Like it looked like I could help them, but then they'd be in the room with me, and then I'd start working with them, and then I'd be like, I don't know what the fuck to do with these people.
Now I want to ask a quick question, because I've never heard anyone put it as clearly like that, but just by a show of hands, who can relate to the idea of either enrolling clients or thinking about enrolling clients and worried that you're not going to be able to help them? Okay, look at all those hands, Birdey. And I've never heard anyone say it out loud.
Really?
Interesting. Like, tell you what I'm doing, guys. I'm making a note of it because Birdey has just given me, one of the things, so the theme of this weekend is making your living from the inside out. And you've heard me say, some of you umpteen times, you need to get your client's world. You need to join the conversation that they're already having with themselves. Well, the thing Birdey just said, and that 90% of people put their hand up to, that tells me that there are coaches and therapists and change workers all around the world who have that exact fear and code it in that way. And so that will almost certainly be making its way into my next piece of launch video or something like that. So thanks, man. You've really helped me out. Continue.
You're welcome. If you need anything like straight to the point and with expletives, you can just ask me a question.
Thanks, man.
So yeah, and the thing for me was that, like I said, I trained as a hypnotherapist, and not in one of those, watch swinging hypnotherapists. The hypnotherapy I trained in was a lot more conversational and NLP based, kind of the way you used to work in a way, I guess. And so, and I felt comfortable within that model, and I was working that way for a while. And I had a business coach as well, who was my supervisor, who helped me get the business off the ground, because I'm sure a lot of people can relate. It's one thing you do the training and being a coach, and then you're like, right, where are the clients? They don't just appear because they don't suddenly just know you've got a coaching practice. And so I'd become quite comfortable with working within that model. But then, like I said, I think what it looked like to me was I must have somehow got more confident and more experienced. That it looked like I got more complicated clients. And then I'd enroll them, and then there'd be certain points I'd be like, I don't know what to do with them. Or I would be doing the same techniques and things, and I'd be like, why is this not working? when it's worked on these other clients. Or even more confusingly, I'd be having conversations with them and then they'd change and I'd be like, I don't know why they've changed. I don't know why this has worked because I feel like I haven't done all of my interventions and techniques. And it really fucking confused me. And I started to then question myself, what am I doing wrong? So I knew I was looking for something else. And convoluted story short, someone had suggested about the principles, and I knew that you were affiliated with someone that was my supervisor. And so I got hold of Clarity, and I don't know what it was, but I'd listened to the book, and I don't know why, but something in me shifted for a few days, and I couldn't explain why, but I was like, there's something in here. So yeah, that's when I got in touch and signed up for the course. And then I was really excited about it. But then I did my usual, because I think I signed up really quite early and I got a bunch of information, I think, because I was on Thriving Coaches as well before I was going to do the Clarity course. But then, because you give away so much content, Jamie, which is always a great thing, and I'm always someone like, great, give me content. I did my normal, which is I've got to binge listen to all of this and get it all in my brain so that I'm perfect before I start. And I became absolutely sick of you after about 3 weeks.
It only took 3 weeks?
Well, and worse, because this was the thing, Jem, because what I realized, I was trying to do my normal, I'll listen to this while I'm multitasking, doing everything else in my life, right? And I didn't realize the kind of the subtlety in what you were doing back then. So in a way, I'm like, why is Jamie just having conversations with these people? And they're suddenly, oh my God, you've changed my life. And he's literally just talking to them. What's this about? Where's the intervention? Why is he not asking them to close their eyes? I don't understand. So yeah, I mean, I stressed myself out with the whole thing, but at the time, I thought it was your fault. And of course, then when I started the Clarity course, Clarity certification, I very quickly realized that I just didn't get it. I know we talked about this before, and I know some of the people on this call will remember that I was in a particularly difficult relationship at the time. And what I didn't realize is that I was cutting myself off from a lot of people. And I actually found the whole thing quite triggering in a way, because it's what I'd used to done in the previous course I'd done. I had all these unconscious strategies in place where I'd turn up really early and I'd sit at the front so that I could just put my hand up to the trainer. And then I've just got their attention. But then I didn't realize it's also because then I'm not amongst other people. I'm just focused on them. And I could do things like, it's break time, grab one of my friends and run away and hide from everybody else. Can't really do that on a Zoom in front of 50 people. It's like you're here or you're not. So I didn't realize at the time, but I was feeling really disconnected through the first couple of months, 3 months of Clarity. And I wasn't getting it because of that disconnection and because my, not realizing that presence was a problem for me. I'm at my computer, you're talking away. I'm here sort of half doing my emails. And again, I'm wondering why am I not getting this? Why am I not getting this? This is really confusing. And of course I thought it was all your fault. This is all bollocks. It doesn't add up. I don't get why I've learned all this stuff, which was obviously my belief system about how hypnotherapy works. And you're telling me this other stuff. And it really stressed me out until again, long story short, I had this realization where I was like, oh fuck, this is because I'm not listening properly. And I think it was that moment, and because I think you reached out to me because I guess you'd realized that I was not having a great time of it, and we had a conversation, and I said at that point, I've not been paying attention. I know that I'm creating this. And I think you said to me something along the lines of, well, if you've applied a mastery model before, as in, learning something rote, why don't you do it with this? And I was like, great idea. It's when I think about it now, it's absolutely ridiculous because what I'd been my whole kind of MO before for the whole thing was I'm just going to turn up and expect to be downloaded stuff into. It's how about I actually get engaged and start trying to learn myself? Wouldn't that be a great fucking idea? And that really turned it around for me when I started to do that, when I started to get the books. And then I then got into meditation as well, because I still reading some of the principles books. I'm like, I don't get it. But as I started exploring other stuff with spirituality and meditation, I was like, I'd have these embodied experiences where I go, fuck, that's what Jamie's talking about.
So what happened?
Well, after then?
Yeah.
Well, after then, I started to realize that what you were talking about was truth. I started to see, because I think before, I was it was a conceptual argument in my head. It was I believed all this stuff that I'd learned before, and on a conceptual level, what you were saying and what I was learning didn't match. And of course, as soon as I started to have embodied understanding of some of the things you were talking about, it started to break down these previous understandings. And it then, you know, had me turn the camera on myself more and more and go, this is my bullshit coming up. This is me. This is my perception. And then what really turned it around for me was, I think, that moment when I asked for coaching in the group. And I didn't realize, again, before, the reason I've been hiding from that was because, you know, I didn't trust you and anybody else. But in that moment, after doing that, and then writing the post about it that I did, I suddenly felt so much more part of the group and connected. And just a load of stuff fell in place. And that's a really archetypal experience that I've had in the past. But because of the principles understanding that I had, I suddenly went, oh shit, that's how that works. That's what actually happened. Like, that was an insight. That's all, like, you know, my perceptual reality changing because of something I've done. And just that whole journey really began to change then the way I worked. So I started to play with, because I think in my head I still had this belief, surely I can't just talk to someone and they change. But then more and more I started to let go of the techniques and just have conversations, and then people did change. And I didn't, you know, straight away understand why, but I started to trust myself more and more, trust my wisdom. And then further and further through the journey, that's when I started to get more clarity on what you were doing, and then being able to, because you know, you talk about, oh, watch their unconscious, watch what they'll do, and I'd be able to see, oh, that was an insight, I saw their eyes, stuff like that. But it's because I let go of all the belief system stuff that I had before, or at least more of it. So I was I was actually paying attention rather than doing, what was it we called it all? I think you might have framed it before. There's a difference between listening and listening with an agenda.
Yeah.
And I realized what I was doing largely before was listening to prove myself right, and that's not the same as being open to learning.
It's so interesting, you know. The thing that really strikes me, Birdey, is that from a how does it all work perspective, what you're talking about is all the stuff that fell away. You know, the reason I refer to this as subtractive psychology, that ability to listen and really be present with someone, it was always there. It was just underneath a lot of extra baggage. Yeah, it's really cool. So what are some of the differences you've seen with your clients and how you're working with them? And because what I'm thinking about, Birdey, is when you originally kind of framed this conversation, you said this thing that you'd been enrolling clients who you didn't know how to help. How does that look different now?
I have more faith in my ability to show up, and I doubt myself less. Like, I might have said to you before, I'd done a lot of core belief work on my sense of not good enough, and it never seemed to shift. And just during Clarity, I woke up one day and I was in this room, and I just remember thinking, oh, I don't feel not good enough anymore. That's weird. And I thought, that's really fucking weird, because I've not done any actual work on it as such. It had just kind of disappeared.
I love that. I just want to say something about that. Well, first of all, who can relate to the idea of that not good enough thing? So this is almost like an archetypal experience as well. I'll never forget it. I don't know, halfway through Clarity certification, a couple of years ago, this client, Angela, says, strangest thing, I've stopped biting my nails. I was like, what's strange about that? She goes, well, I didn't even realize it until my husband told me that I hadn't been doing it for 3 weeks, and we hadn't even worked on it. But the nail biting was a response to a background level of stress that she had being generated by her beliefs about who she was and about life and all that sort of stuff. And as that fell away, the need to bite her nails fell away as well. Another client, Mike George, who some of you may know, Mike, he hadn't said much during the program. And again, probably module 4, module 5, he stands up, he says, strangest thing, he said, for 20 years, I've had high blood pressure. He had dangerously high blood pressure. Like the nurses in the room will know, if it starts with a 200, 200 over something over is like, it's bad. He was like 220 over one something is really bad. And he'd been to doctors and neurologists and all sorts. And the best they could give him was it was something to do with stress, but he'd been working on it for 20 years and no luck. He said, I've just been and had my blood pressure tested. I don't have high blood pressure anymore. And we didn't work on it. It just regulated because of the impact of this subtractive psychology, the impact of getting a deeper understanding of who you really are and how your experience is created, and clearing up the misunderstandings, the false beliefs that have been creating all that stress and tension in the first place. So yeah, I totally get it, Birdey. I totally get it. That feeling of, oh, I don't have that anymore.
Yeah, well, I just started to see, like, I can still get insecure. I mean, at the beginning of this call, you asked me a question and something I could tell I started to get insecure, and I could tell because my mind started to go a bit blank. But now I know, I'm like, that doesn't mean I'm a fucking awful human being. It doesn't mean that everybody hates me. It's like I'm getting insecure because I'm in front of a bunch of people. So, you know, get present and sit with it. What's the worst that happens? They're going to be like, why is he being a bit quiet? And they're probably going to go, oh, he's probably feeling a bit insecure, and then get on with their day. So I don't know. I'm a lot more, I see that kind of thing as a lot more normal and contextual now, I guess, rather than it being like an identity level. And the other thing is that I just, as much as like, I don't entirely subscribe to the whole, like, you know, I don't do anything as a change worker thing. Because otherwise, you know, that wouldn't be great marketing.
Well, and you do things, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I do recognize as well, like, in my mind, when I thought I had the magic, like, I would always say to my clients, so like, you know, it's the work you've done and all that. But part of my belief system was, no, it's my magic techniques. So I do the change to you, which was great if they changed and not if they didn't, obviously, because it was like, what's wrong with me? Well, now I've got a better understanding of how change actually works. There's just more responsibility on, no, that's wrong. I know my responsibility is to show up. And all of, like, mine's about the self-cultivation that I do and the being present and the paying attention and the curiosity and all that stuff that you teach. But if they're not changing, they're not showing up or whatever, then I know that it's not like it's my fault. That doesn't mean I can't do anything about it. Like, but I need to, it's not like, oh shit, I need to, before it was like, oh, I need to go on another course. I need to buy a book on resistant clients or something like that. And it doesn't look like that to me anymore. So there's just a lot more pressure off me, basically, the long and the short of it.
Here's the thing I love about listening to you talk about this. Even the way you said it, it's like their response. No, hang on. It's not like I would say when I'm working with clients, like, test that, see if this fits. When I'm working with clients these days, I feel like I'm doing better work than I've ever done. I'm having more impact than I've ever had. I'm kind of doing less, but they're the bits that I am doing, they're the right bits, because I know what to pay attention to and what not to pay attention to and what's relevant and what's not relevant. And if the client's not changing or something's not landing or it's not working, I'm like, man, I'll need to try this a different way or that sort of thing. So I'm adaptable, but I know where the power is. The power for transformation is in my client. And the power that's in me is the power to be guided insightfully and to resonate with that spirit within, or that soul within, however you want to describe it. And so it's a very different game than the hold still while I fix you game that I used to be involved in. And it's a lot more fun, and it's a lot more free. And it's a lot more impactful. That's my take on it. But it's about, knowing whose side of the street you need to sweep and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think, so I've, you know, even more recently, I've reflected on how I run my business and how I work with clients. And I have made some tweaks in terms of just the way I propose things when I'm proposing a program. So to try and help get more in, because I know that some clients, for example, they're really engaging, and they'll engage set them a task or something to do, and then engage. And they're like, yep, I've read that book you sent me. Can you send me 3 more? And then there are other clients who don't. And it doesn't matter what I try and do and send them, they'll turn up for the sessions, but then they don't do anything necessarily outside of it. Now, I used to take that on myself. And I don't now. And now, again, I've thought recently about how can I structure things more so that I can, make that more prominent as an option, I guess. Because I know some people, like I'll say to them, you can text me anytime. We've got unlimited, say, coaching support, like outside the sessions. But some of them, they'll like, I don't know, it's almost like they feel they can't. So I can influence that and be like, this is actually part of the service, and then maybe check in on them occasionally. But I've also realized that some of them just actually don't want that.
Yeah.
And it's like
people have different kind of clock speed and requirement, and yeah, absolutely.
And the more I realize that now, Jamie, I've realized that I'll often say to my clients with any of this stuff, like, there's no should. And I'll say, like, I'll engage as much as you do. And I might do some initial, but it's like you talk about calibration. So I'll put that stuff up front. Like, you can text me anytime. Like, if you text me at 3 a.m, I probably won't get back to you, but I'll get back to you when I can, and all of that. And I might initially, when we're working together, send some check-in texts or something, just so that they know it's okay. But after that, I don't push it, because now I'm more aware of, does this come across as I'm trying to push? And before I wasn't, because that was oh my God, I'm insecure that I'm not making enough impact. And now I'm like, I'm going to calibrate off you. Yeah. And if you're not going to, like, if you don't want to engage, like, that's not in a bad way, but I mean, like, obviously you're okay with that, if you know what I mean, or that makes sense for you at the moment.
Makes total sense to me too, Birdey. So what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to open it up for everyone else to ask you questions and get your take on things. Just before I do, how do people work with you these days? What's your model for that? Are you doing charge by the hour? Are you doing packages? Do you mix it up? Are you doing intensives? What works for you at the moment?
So currently I do programs, basically. So I say I do bespoke programs with people, which I guess they are in a way, but often people will contact me and I'll try and get them on the phone. Well, I'll get them on the phone. And if I think I can help them, then I'll invite them for a consultation. And then I spend that time, working with them around what do they want, what's actually going on for them. And then I'll be able to propose working together. And normally it is a program of sorts, and regular, like, often with people, especially if they've got, because I'll deal with a lot of anxiety, depression, confidence stuff where essentially they don't, there's a lot of belief stuff in the way. Mm-hmm. And so I'm normally working with people for 3 months, or at least 3 months.
Got it. And is that something you lay out at the beginning of it? Say, I propose we work together for 3 months or 6 months or whatever it might be. So
what I tend to do is I'll say to people, first, like I said, I'll get them, I try and have a phone conversation with them, just because sometimes people are looking for someone who's not me. Right. Some people are looking for a magic pill. They're like, can you put me to sleep and make me stop drinking Coca-Cola?
Yeah.
No. There might be people who can, but I'm definitely not that person.
Yeah.
If I think I can help them, I'll invite them for that consultation. But what I say to them is, that's about us getting on the same page and working out whether we're right for each other. And then at the end of that, I'll propose. And that's when I make the proposal, basically, at the end of that conversation.
Nice. So guys, well, 2 things. First of all, unmute yourselves and give Birdey a big round of applause. It's really just great to hear from Birdey. Thank you. And then what would you love to ask Birdey? What would you love to know about his practice? I mean, one of the things that's interesting about Birdey is he already had a practice doing hypnotherapy and kind of NLP based stuff, and he's transitioned to doing this. So ask him whatever you like. Sarah, go ahead.
I really liked that talk. Thank you, Birdey. And I can resonate with quite a lot of what you talked about. I'm trained in a whole bunch of modalities, including hypnotherapy. And so, yeah, there's certainly things that I can echo where you're chucking every modality going under the sun to a client and you're like, why is this not working? Yeah. Or you've been taught that you've got to find their one belief, and like you're digging and it's like, so I have huge huge amounts of sympathy for what you've described. And I remember the first boot camp weekend where Mr. Smart basically said, you don't need any of that. You've just got the 3 principles. And I'm like, what the fuck have I been doing for 10 years? And I've spent all this money getting trained in all these things. Where have you been all my life? You could have saved me a lot of time, energy, and money. And I'm in that space. I still run a private clinic, and I'm in that space doing what still feels right. So for me at the moment, it's a combination of doing the clarity work, but actually there is sometimes I feel it's right to bring in some of those magic techniques. So if you're working with somebody that's like, I don't know, for example, like highly traumatized, and they're so caught up and you just need to bring them in off the ledge, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to just spend a bit of time doing that, and then we can open up the doorway to really do some other work. So I totally get what you were saying, but my question actually was about, you mentioned meditation, and I have a kind of like mixed relationship with meditation. I know when I do it, it's like great. And I listen to people like Dr. Joe Dispenza going, you know, meditation and you're connecting. And it's like, I don't really want to get up at 5:30 in the morning every single morning and meditate, quite frankly. But you're almost kind of like led to believe that if you don't meditate, that you don't get all of those profound transformations. So I guess it's a question to both of you, actually. Where do you think meditation plays a part in the 3 Ps?
You want to go first, Birdey?
Sure. So I think, I remember, I think it was Jamie's, I don't know if whether you said to me specifically or you said, but what I remember hearing was you don't need to meditate. And I think that's probably true. You know.
Fabulous.
However, see, like, I don't know whether I'm, you know, I don't know whether I just don't get the principles at a deep enough level, whether I'm a bit ADHD brain, or like, I don't know, right? But what I do know is that when I learned the principles, it was conceptual until I started to meditate. That, because for me, meditation, so when I learned meditation, I learned it with a guy called Sam Harris, okay? And he comes from a very non-spiritual way of looking at it, and he's very aligned with like the nature of consciousness. Like, he's not really interested in the belief systems of, you know, whatever of the different traditions. He's about looking at the nature of consciousness. And what I realized was, well, for me, that's almost like mechanics of how the principles work, or at least that's the way I learned it, because I was understanding these concepts. That's what I mean. When I started to sit down, I was like, oh shit, like, yeah, okay. So what I used to have, I didn't realize how much I would go in my head versus not. So I was so thought fused. And when I started meditating and realized that I could actually let go of that thought and then it would disappear and go away, that's the moment where I went, oh fuck, I am actually creating my perception. Like, this isn't real. Do you know what I mean? Or at least this isn't like what's out there. And even though I knew it conceptually, that's where I saw it. Now, what I've learned since then is that if I don't meditate, I get caught up a lot more quickly. Like, it happened to me this week, just because, you know, stuff got busy and I got caught in that loop of, you know, oh, I'll just slot this in, I'll just slot that in. And then my meditation practice went down. And really, again, all meditation practices for me is taking that time for myself to get present. And I just call it meditation. But I wasn't doing that. So, of course, you know, as I'm sure you guys have known, right? Brain gets stressier. It looks like it's this problem with the stuff outside. It's not. It's the problem with this. So I know when I make time to meditate, when that's on my mind about being present, then my life is easier. There are probably other people who don't need to have a formal practice they call meditation to be able to do that. I've not so far managed to work out how for myself.
Yeah, that's spot on, Birdey. The way I'd put it, Sarah, is there is huge value in spending time in the state of meditation. And the state of meditation is natural for human beings, and some people enter that state. For instance, I enter the state of meditation spontaneously when I'm in a coaching session with someone. Not all the way through it, but like for a lot of it, I'm in a state of meditation. I'm often in a state of meditation when I'm teaching. I often find my way into a state of meditation when I'm out walking. Now, I don't have a formal practice of meditating, but I spend a huge amount of time in the state of meditation. And as best I can tell, the primary purpose of the practice of meditating is to make it as easy as possible for you to spend time in the state of meditation. So I see huge value in spending time in the state of meditation. And as far as meditating goes, if that makes sense to you, then do it. But you know, this goes for meditating, it goes for using techniques, it goes for anything. Do whatever makes sense to you. Because I absolutely know that that's what everyone's going to do anyway, right? We all do what makes sense at our current level of understanding. Now, at my current level of understanding, it doesn't make sense for me to have a formal practice of meditation. But 2 weeks from now, it might do. And that's cool. The principles have nothing to say about what we should or shouldn't do. The principles are only about, here's how it works. Here's how it works. So here's what I can guarantee. If Birdey meditates tomorrow and finds himself in a deep and profound meditative space, that's going to be the principles in action. And if Birdey meditates tomorrow and has a head full of bees, that's going to be the principles in action. It's the only game in town. And so I encourage you, Sarah, to do whatever makes sense to you. And the other thing is, it may make sense to you to have a regular daily practice of doing something, or it may make sense to you to do it when you feel like it. Now, the meditation teachers of this world would say, no, the value in meditation is in having a rigorous disciplined practice. And they may be right, but you know, my personal understanding is that the value in a practice of meditating is purely the amount of time you spend in the state of meditation. So that's my take on it.
Can I add to that, Jamie?
Yeah, please do.
I found the same thing. What I didn't realize was that when I started to work, you know, after starting Clarity, after I got over my hissy fit, when I was with clients, I realized actually I was just becoming very present with them. And what I was, because I was still struggling with depression then, I could be having a head full of bees day, and then the door would open, or I'd click onto a Zoom, and then after the session, I would feel so much better. And what I started to realize after getting into meditation, it was because I'd spent 1 hour to 2 hours just being present, focused on someone else, instead of all the shit in my head. So there's a meditation practice, right? And just not sitting on the floor with my eyes closed.
Yeah, I really like that, because I think that sometimes I've got a meditation cushion. I think I've sat on it 3 times and I've had it for about 5 years because, I think you're right. We have this perception of what meditation is and it isn't, but I live right by the sea. And if I'm walking along by the sea, I'm just like, you know, at one with my surroundings. I'm not really thinking. And actually after the first boot camp weekend, when I had like so many insights that my head was like Blackpool illuminations, I just remember feeling like my head was calmer than it had probably ever been for like a few weeks, actually, which, was me just in that meditative state. It's just breaking the perception that you've got to be, as you say, on the floor at 4 o'clock in the morning with your eyes closed. So, thank you.
You're so welcome. Henrietta's asked a question and asked, is the value in meditating also in learning not to identify with your thoughts? Well, I'd say that I've met people who meditate who still identify with their thoughts, and I've met people who don't meditate who don't identify with their thoughts. The thing that's going to have you stop identifying with your thoughts is insight. If you insightfully realize, oh, I'm not my thinking, you're not going to identify with your thoughts. If you don't have that insight, you could meditate until the cows come home and you'll still be identifying with your thoughts. So I want again, and I'm not having a go at the practice of meditation, Henrietta. I'm not. I promise you, I'm not. What I'm pointing to is what does the heavy lifting. And if you've got two people who have had a regular daily practice of meditation for 10 years, and you check in with them after 10 years, and one of them is like Matthew Ricard, and he's radiating so much love and peace and beauty, you can feel it from 50 feet away. And the other one is angry and frustrated and not in a good feeling. It's going to be because one of them had insights and the other one didn't. And they both might attribute that to their meditation practice, but it's actually come from that capacity for insight that resides within. One thing you said as a kind of throwaway comment, you said, I had depression at the time. Have you got a quick summary of that situation for us, Birdey? I don't know what the details of it are, but
the quick summary is that I've learned now that depression is it's a process, it's a state of mind anybody can get stuck in if certain factors come up, and now I understand those things I don't get stuck in it as often anymore. I haven't for ages, and if it does, I know what it's about and I know how to get out of it. Arguably that's what started to happen a few days ago when I started to get more stressed, but I was like, oh, it's because this is looking real at some point, so I need to. And it's little insights I had, like instead of going, oh, I need to finish that to-do list, it's like, no, does that stuff need to be done? No, but I'm going to get in the bath and get present, because that's going to nourish me, and then that's going to help me stay above, do you know what I mean? So that's why that doesn't.
I totally know what you mean, and that's spot on. I just love that, because those kind of labels like depression and that sort of thing, those are the sort of things that some people carry with them for years, and just knowing that there's a deeper reality to what's going on can be so liberating. So thanks for that, Birdey. Liz Taplin, go ahead.
Hi, Birdey. Good to see you. I have got a question, but a bit of a sort of insight as well, or a bit of context. We were on Thriving Coaches and Clarity together, and I always like to sit at the front because I usually forget to take my glasses and I can't see the board. And I like to sit in the middle sort of thing. And so when we went to sit down on the very first Thriving Coaches, you were in my seat. You've got the front row, center column, all sort of dressed in black. And so I sort of came and sat, not right next to you. I think I left the chair and then sat in the next one. And I was just really conscious of me sitting there like this, as if to say, I could sort of see you bristling, okay, what's this Jamie Smart got to say sort of thing. And I really felt that. And obviously I sort of witnessed from afar your journey all the way through. I remember the coaching session you had with Jamie on Clarity and your amazing post, which took my breath away at the time, because I could relate on the journey that you'd come through. So seeing you today is like the next massive leap in that story. It's just beautiful to see you talking.
That's all Jamie's fault. Blame him.
Yeah.
He could have got rid of me ages ago, and he chose not to.
Birdey did it.
It's just beautiful to see, as a friend, as a person, as a case study, just to see that journey you've been on. Mm-hmm. And I can remember, I think I'm right in saying right back at the start of that journey, someone asking, it might even be me, where do you get your clients from? And I think you said that you advertise in the local paper for hypnotherapy services. What's the case now? Where do you get your clients from? And presumably sounds like there's a flow of clients. You're not sort of desperately going knocking on doors and things like that. So I'm just interested, where do your clients come from?
Well, that's a secret. And if you sign up for my super duper marketing course, then I'll be happy to share all of my secrets with you. No, in all honesty, so the biggest thing that helped me was It was getting a business coach. It was getting someone who knew their shit, because I didn't. That's what helped me. But what he helped me with was get my website built. And he helped me get people to look at it and to make sure that was right. I got someone to look at the SEO on that. And just doing stuff like, getting it linked to various directories and, getting a Google listing. And I also worked out Google ads. I was spending far too much money with Google ads for a while because I did it myself. And then I finally found someone to kind of do it for me. Again, it's still not great, but, and I post there's a local like magazine that we've got that I've got an advert in, when it comes out every month. So the only problem is I'm not really good at asking people, how did you hear about me? So I don't know really what works and what doesn't, but I do a bunch of stuff, and I have done a bunch of stuff. The underlying principle for it for me was asking for the help and not being scared to spend the money. Because I pay like £150 a month or something for an advert. And when I was starting out, that was fucking terrifying, right? But I will get inquiries I have since then, like every month it comes out, I'll get a few. Now some of them are like not necessarily like the kind of that turn into clients, but I also know that people see me every month. They see my face in the advert, and they have for 3 or 4 years. So
yeah.
I don't know if that helps.
It does. It's consistency, isn't it? And you're building that know, like, trust with people that you don't even know are out there yet. They're seeing your advert every month, and there's that guy again, and when they want somebody, you're going to come to mind. So
and I started doing videos, and me and a colleague Amy have started a podcast.
I've seen that. It's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. But so stuff like that, like I've realized now we need to start putting content out, because it's one like if you need to know who Jamie is, there's about 20 million hours of him out there, so it's really hard to not get to know him. Whereas for me, I realized actually like there was only my website, which is why I've got a lot of time up front to get to know people.
Yeah, brilliant. Anyway, lovely to see you, and thank you so much.
And you, thank you so much for your kind words, Liz.
Craig, we'll make this the last question. Go ahead, Craig.
Thanks. Hi, Birdey. How you doing?
Hello, mate. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, thanks. Really like what you shared. Thanks very much. I just wondered to what extent, now that you have the principles in the mix, but you came from a hypnotherapy background, you'll just choose what is appropriate in the moment, like Jamie says, do what's right for the client. Is that how you approach it, or have you kind of pushed the hypnotherapy to one side, or you'll bring it in if it seems appropriate, or you might not even use it at all? How do you now view it? Because obviously that was where you came from. So
I just see people in the world differently. I mean, don't get me wrong, like some of my terminology is probably like the way I see the world, people still have core beliefs, I would call them. But if you like, they're just, or in NLP, it's like different frames for seeing the world. They're different. And so I still, when I'm working with clients, I will often still talk to that in a way up front to kind of help draw a bit of a picture about, or a story, if you like, for how things are working for them. But yeah, I studied NLP and I still love NLP. And if you listen to Jamie, you'll hear he still, even though he says he doesn't necessarily consciously think about them, the language patterns just fall out of his mouth. But I notice I'm not very, I'm nowhere near as kind of proficient with the language as Jamie is, but I know my hearing has got a lot better for it. And so I don't know, all of that stuff, all of those skills, and I've done a lot of I've taken workshops on stuff like shame and all sorts that have been really interested me, but all that feeds into the principles now. So I'm hearing what's going on, and in the end, now I just trust myself, I guess. So how do I work a lot with clients? I'm working very much on their perceptions, I guess. I'm hearing about how they're structuring their world, and I'm diving in with that. So I probably do a bit more, I don't go upstream probably as quickly as Jamie will do. And I don't really talk about the principles. I'll talk about perceptions and how they're creating their reality. But it's all informed by the principles, and I'm using those listening skills to go, so you think you're not good enough. Okay, well, how does that work? Or what does that look like to you? Or one of Jamie's favorite questions, like, how do you know that's true? That kind of thing.
Would you still do a hypnosis process if it seemed appropriate?
No, I don't believe in all that stuff anymore.
Right.
Like literally, like now, I think the biggest thing that, other than those, so some of those skills have helped me to like see where people are spatially, like, and go like, oh, there's a missing bit there. That's where the NLP stuff still makes sense to me, and I haven't got it quite, I guess, in the, well, anyway, but Hang on, I've lost my train of thought. Sorry, what was the question?
Well, that's fine. That's fine. I was just wondering if you actually did hypnosis anymore, basically.
Right, no, so I don't. So for me, I know now insight is what makes the difference. And I see when someone has an insight, and I can hear in their language now when they change the way they're looking about it. So, and I've seen that so many times now. Like occasionally I'll get someone to close their eyes. Or sometimes I think that even the other day, like someone was in my house and there was something they were talking about, and I realized they were having trouble kind of getting out of their heads. So I got them to stand up and say, like, imagine there's you over there. Now, you could say that's a Gestalt chair or I'm dissociating them, but I wasn't really thinking about it like that. It was more just, this might help them get an insight because they're stuck in their head. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, doing what makes sense, yeah.
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 But arguably that was informed because ages ago I studied all that stuff, so.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
I think that beautifully kind of points to what I'm saying. Like, Birdey's got a lifetime of experience, both his therapeutic and coaching and hypnotherapy experience, but also his experience of life and his experience as a partner and as a business person and all that sort of stuff. And everything can come to bear when you're working with someone. So that's why I think the invocation of, do what makes sense to you. Like the thing I want all my students to hear is, I trust you. I trust you to make the right calls in the moment to support your client. And because you're guided by that inner source of wisdom and intelligence, just like your client is. And so there's a way in which you're collaborating with them to find the right way forward and to find the right solutions and all that sort of stuff. And I really believe in that. Teresa had said, I've read Sam Harris's book, Waking Up, A Guide to Spirituality Without Religion. Can recommend it to anyone who's interested in exploring. It was useful for me on this journey as a former scientist wanting to get comfortable with the spiritual nature of the principles. I'm a huge fan of Sam Harris. It's a really good book. And the thing I really enjoy when you listen, it's funny. I heard an interview that Harris has a fantastic podcast called the Making Sense Podcast. And he does these long form interviews with people. And he did an interview with two guys. One of them was Daniel Goleman, the guy who started the field of emotional intelligence. And I can't remember who the other chap was, but they'd both written a book. And so Harris was interviewing them. And it was very much in the same domain as the stuff we're talking about. But what you could hear, and you'll hear it if you listen to the interview, they're trying to make sense of the world without the principles, and they keep kind of bumping up against things and that sort of thing. And I'm like, man, if they only knew the principles, it would all the stuff they're talking about would make sense. But here's the funny thing. Harris, and I suspect this is because of his experience with the world of meditation and his fascination with consciousness, he was, of the three of them, he was closest to the principles. Like he was like one insight away from seeing this. But because he's still seeing it as an outside-in world, as he still has that coding for it, he still bumps up against these, pieces of furniture in the dark. So anyway, thank you so much. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to give Birdey a huge round of applause. Then we're going to go for a 20-minute break. Then I'm going to come back, do a quick coaching demo, and then we're going to do some coaching in groups to wrap it up for the day. So join me in giving unmute yourselves and give Birdey a great, big, warm round of applause. Thanks, man. That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie, and thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Really, really huge pleasure.